to the World United. Welcome to the World United.
Dr. Uganda, shall we start the panel discussion because it's already late?
Yes, please.
Yeah. So I would like to ask a question like how to really understand and awaken oneness in mankind?
Are you going to call on us or do we just pop in?
Yeah,
please
please
forward.
pop in. Please pop in. Yeah, because it would
Well,
be like whatever comes in.
Okay. For me, when I see this behind me, everyone and everything connected, that's how I feel oneness is. I'm in another group with, and we are having exactly the same conversation about oneness. So I feel oneness is also that consciousness which makes the same things that people are talking about in whichever group that we may go to. And I just feel that oneness is something that uh, is such an essence that it's very difficult to speak in words about it. But in the meditation we just did, in the feelings that we have, if we in our silence, in how Vasantji was talking and everyone before me, I think that's how we feel that oneness.
Yeah. Actually, there is a very beautiful atmosphere created for that oneness, and each and every one of us are feeling the same. Who else would like to input?
Actually, the God or the Creator created man, and man created religions, castes, creeds, and all these divisions. Once we realize that God has created only man, or the Creator has created only man, and we have given him, even gods also, different names, so many different names, and there is literally the fight starts there, that yours is superior or mine is superior, or you are superior and I'm inferior, kind of a thing. When we realize that the divine is within each one of us, and there is nothing but mankind, we have divided him. We understand how animal agriculture, killing of animals, is influencing our lives and creating hatred and division within us. Then I think we will be able to unite as one mankind. But we have to
Correct.
understand that every living organism has a right to live. Till we do not
Correct.
understand that, we won't be able to unite mankind as one. This is my opinion.
Absolutely. Padam sir has raised his hand. Padamji, what would you like to say?
Ma'am, I have a question. Actually, if we realize that majority of the population of the world are non-vegetarian.
Yeah.
So the inner violence is increasing, and because of the inner violence, achieving unity consciousness is becoming difficult. Another thing is the factor of jealousy, lack of appreciation for others, intolerance about others being more talented than us, because everybody considers that he is the most talented person in the universe. So all these things are indirectly adding negative energy. So how you suggest, madam, that in such an environment where even there is no unity consciousness within the house itself, husband and wife are having two opinions and each one is trying to impose his or her blueprint of thoughts on the others, how we can achieve unity consciousness from your angle, you please suggest.
So this question is for Sharmila ji or to me?
It is to Sharmila ji.
Sharmila ji. Yes, please, ma'am.
See, when I was a child, I'll tell you how my mother raised me. And from that, we can perhaps try to understand what each one of us can do, we as women, because we are the creators, right? We carry the child within us 9 months. When we were younger, We were in the habit of killing, small ants and all. During rains, we would take a stake, and try to put the ant on it, which is trying to die, which is about to, let's say, drown in the water. Show it to our mother, or we try to sort of squish it under our feet. And my mother would say that you should not do it because he will go and complain to the creator. So that was the first lesson of the karmic theory for me. She explained it further later on. But what we can do as women is, when we conceive the child, from then on we can start giving garbha sanskar to our children. We can read good books. We can read theories on reincarnation. We can try to understand the concepts of nature which go far beyond science. So when the mother is reading, when the mother is understanding, she's inculcating it automatically in the child. When such a child is born, so there are children, I have seen them. There are several ways, Facebook and YouTube videos also of small children, even as young as 3 years old, who say that I'm not going to have this food because it is an animal. And I don't want to have animals. And when we have small children in the house, we should inculcate in those children love for animals. We should not consume animal produce, and we should not give it to the child also. All protein comes from plants. There is nothing that is coming from an animal. Even the, let's say, the mutton also is eating only grass. It is not eating non-vegetarian. If you see, we are using horses for racing. Why don't we use lions and cheetahs for racing? Because they are violent animals. They will kill us. The horse, the elephant, the strongest land animals are vegetarian. We have to understand this first, then we have to explain it. We are fortunate in this moment to be living in a country where a good percentage of the population is already following a vegetarian diet. And we can communicate this on a massive scale, or wherever we can, wherever it is possible for us, to other human beings, so that they understand. A lot of them have a higher consciousness and they understand. They are able to latch on to what we say. This is only the beginning.
Thank you, ma'am.
So on and so forth.
Yes, Meenakshi ji.
Yes, I would also like to add that, Padamji, to your question, that actually, like Sharmila ji said, not only in India, but there is a growing movement of people not only towards being vegetarian, but towards being vegan. I live in the US and I see around me so many people who are becoming. So we have to see the trend. The trend in the world is towards a higher consciousness, a more non-violent one. And one more thing which I'd like to add, because I was born in a very vegetarian home, and in a conscious way, not because the culture was vegetarian, everyone else was not. And I was stunned when I realized that my children need, for them it's difficult to stay vegetarian. And once my son had asked me, if why don't you eat animals? And I said, because I don't think it's right for me to kill another being to eat it. And he said, that means I should also feel ashamed. And I said, do you feel ashamed? He said, no. I said, no, then don't feel ashamed. Whenever you're eating something, give it an honor, the way Native Americans before killing an animal would honor it. And so you're not killing to eat in a negative way, but in a positive way. Why I'm saying this is to say that we have to inculcate higher level emotions within us. Then we can go on the path of this very pure way of eating. Not everyone is able to follow it. So instead of telling them this is wrong, if we show them how to raise the vibration of what they're doing, automatically this wish to eat something by hurting it will disappear. I actually feel hurt even eating an animal, but I mean a vegetable. But now that Sharmila ji has explained scientifically, maybe I will feel less hurt when I'm cutting a tomato. You know, it's all about raising the vibration of what action we are taking.
Yeah, Vasanji, you wanted to say something?
I just love all that is shared, and for me, God is experience. At the moment, I'm experiencing all this, and that's why I would like to say that when you can truly experience to what is being with yourself, I think that sense of trust will start developing in you. Your mind will tell you 10 things that we need to do this and we need to do that, but I think life itself is right here for you to experience it as you. And when you truly do that, I feel, things are manifesting in a most beautiful way. We really don't have to put our mind in everything. I think life or Gaia would show up, give us hints, give us signs, make us meet people like we are meeting, and feel grateful. So I think the beautiful awakening is already there. We are in the middle of it. We just have to keep going deep within us. So that's what I must share, and that's my experience.
Thank you. Shammi Chabraji, you wanted to say something?
I was just thinking, like, if the question on differentiating between what is good and what is bad, it will be an unending journey and it will be very confusing. So the best thing is, if you are conscious enough, if you are conscious enough within you, then it is not even possible to do something which is bad, because your consciousness will never allow to do something which is against nature or which is against the creation. So it is better to be conscious before doing any act, and your consciousness decides everything. It will never allow you to do something evil. Secondly, on the karmic theory, if we believe it, and if you believe it totally, and if you accept it, agree to it 100%, that is going to create a lot of trouble, because if you believe that whatever we are getting in this birth is a result of our previous lives and previous births, many things we are creating in this birth also. So in this way, this cycle is going to continue, and this will become unending. And Tantra says that you can, at this right moment, if you are awakened and if you are conscious enough, all that your accumulation of the past gets washed away right away in this moment. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. So, Dr. Yugandhar has already co-created the circle of consciousness. So, sir, would you like to add upon something?
Yeah. Thank you, Renikaji. Thank you, all the speakers of the track on day 2 of Global Transformation Festival India chapter. Oneness is something which cannot be enforced. Oneness is something which cannot be understood conceptually or intellectually. It is not a postulate. We are being programmed to think independently and yet be connected with all. The word man came from Latin, which means thinking. It came from Latin menios, which means thinking. One who thinks is called as a man, like man in Hindi. Man in Latin means the same. That is the only thing which separates the body and soul. That's why we are not oneness conscious. Because of this mind. I define mind as a peripheralized consciousness, as a cloudy consciousness, exteriorized consciousness. Because of these factors, oneness is something which is understandably difficult for humans. Other than humans, everything is in natural resonance of oneness. Be it natural elements, be it birds, arboreals, aquatic beings, that which creeps, crawls, flies, walks and runs, everything is oneness conscious. But the humans are different. For humans to understand oneness, we need to remove this man thinking part, which is separating the body and soul. Someone said only buffaloes and Buddhas are able to understand oneness. So we can't become a buffalo. There is only other way. We need to become Buddhas. So Buddha means one who dissolves his buddhi, who dissolves his mind is called a Buddha. So awakening is nothing but dissolving one's mind. So And when several such individuals get awakened within, ignite the fire within, when we reach that so-called critical mass, we don't know what is that exactly, because it's a mathematical figure. When Gautam Buddha, Mahavir, Confucius, Socrates, Plato, Lao Tzu, who are all contemporaries across the world 2,500 years back, for the size of only 20 million population then, so many people were there. But for 7.5 billion population at present, occupying every pocket of land here, island or desert or what type of different types of soils, human inhabitation has been there. For this size of population, imagine how many people like you and me need to be there to make people understand this oneness. It's a collective affair. People are extremely obsessed with the individualizations, extremely obsessed with self-aggrandizements. Huge compulsive disorder. It's a disorder for me. And it's a pandemic as powerful as the corona. So once we come out of these individualizations, once we come out of this so-called glamour and sensationalism, which ruins spiritual world, I think oneness certainly happens, and it is on the way. It's happening. It is in the process. And it cannot be called as a product because there is nothing like we have achieved oneness. It continues. And we need to only enjoy the journey, because journey alone is the destination. There is no definable arrival point here. Journey alone, it's destination. To be on the journey itself is coming on to the oneness circle. This is what I feel. And it is all B aspects of internal aspect. But when we talk about the do aspect, how we can do it? We can do it by way of coming together first. Respecting others, whatever he is. Maybe some people are not at all awakened at all, but still sleepy, still very much in slumber, but still, because they are human beings, we need to respect them, because they are like that. So, and people who are wise, we need to respect. Of course, by default, we respect them. We don't know that they are wise even. Many people do not know, cannot understand wise men because of their simplicity. People get carried away by their simplicity. So all types of people, irrespective of lower or higher discriminations, when we keep on respecting everyone and come together for the common purpose and aim and objective of oneness, the very togetherness on one day transforms, mutates into oneness. And it's happening when United started. Slowly, when so much diversity, everybody was interested only to speak. No one listens. Nobody is interested to others, listening to others. Everybody is interested to talk. So from that trend, there was a paradigm shift. People started listening. People started understanding. And now, World Net is literally in each and every country. I'm not talking about the World Net organization. I'm talking about World Net as unity consciousness movement. We don't call the World Net as organization. We call it as simple unity consciousness, unconditional unity consciousness movement, very sincerely, very honestly, 24 karat. So when we carry this type of spirit, naturally people get awakened, seeing our own sincerity, our own honesty. Whether the third word and deed, there is either any gap or not. If there is a lot of self-checking and allow people to observe us, naturally, with our sincerity, we win their hearts. Oneness is a reality, is no more utopic idea. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Dr. Yugandhar. Padam sir, how does quantum give explanation about this wellness? The oneness. How do you relate to quantum, the oneness?
Thank you for your question, madam. In fact, we are living in a quantum universe, and this universe is non-local. We can connect with each other. So from the point of view of quantum science, the truth is the principle of uncertainty. If we consider that anything can happen anytime. We should, how we are going to face it? We can face it only with our strong belief system. We can face it if we can come out of our Newtonian mindset, and we can build a quantum mindset. Quantum mindset is a mindset of total belief. Newtonian mindset is a mindset where always we ask for evidences. For example, allopathy, the medical science, is a Newtonian science. If the experiment of the medical science says that, okay, it works for a particular disease, these medicines work for a particular disease, they work. They even tell about what are the side effects of those medicines. But if they find that they are not working on, say, brainstem damage, then they will say, okay, your brain stems have been damaged, now they cannot be revived. But quantum science is a science of total belief. Quantum science is a science of total faith. And on the basis of quantum science, if we can somehow reach to the 0 point energy, the energy of the total silence, by meditation, if we can reach to the energy of total silence, then definitely any type of disease can be healed. If all of us can reach to the energy of total silence by meditation simultaneously, then definitely unity consciousness can be easy. Experiments were done from Japan. There was prayer offered by thousands of persons from Japan, and there were two sets of experiment. Certain fruits were grown. Some were given prayers. A part of the fruits were given prayers from distance, and remaining parts were grown in a natural way. So it was found that the fruits who were offered prayers, they grew much better. Their taste was much better, and those prayers were affecting the fruits from a distance of more than 2000 miles. So what I mean to say is, if we do meditation simultaneously, not only ordinary meditation, by meditation, if we can reach to the 0 point energy, the energy of total silence, then definitely we can achieve unity consciousness at a faster way. Another thing I want to say, sir, as human being, we are co-creators of God. We are co-creators, and we must have faith that because we are having the God energy within us, God particle is within us, God has sent us to this universe to do some miraculous things. If we can maintain that faith that yes, miracles can be done by us, if you work towards that, we can do impossible healings, and at the same time, we can reach to the unity consciousness in a much easier way. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir. It was a wonderful explanation. Mahesh ji, do you want to say something? Mahesh Purohit ji?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you want to add on to the conversation?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Namaskar to all. There is a tradition of 16 sacraments or sanskars in India, which take place from conception to death. These sacraments teach the way of living. Nowadays, there is some misuse of sacraments or sanskaras. Misuse. Nowadays, children are being made machines in the name of sanskars. Many ideologies are being imposed on them. In India, it is often said about children that they should be sanskar or manners, whereas apart from the sanskars or manners given after birth, children bring sanskars from destiny itself. Through their chromosomes and genes, they bring the sanskar. Their life is shaped by those sanskars. The same seed bursts into a tree and bears fruit, the qualities which are in the seed. The same type of tree is formed. Even after this, according to us, we impose sanskars on the children. That child keeps on progressing according to the sanskars given by us, and the real energy inside becomes weak. For what purpose did God send him on this earth, and what he had come to do on this earth? It all fades away. We want to make him a doctor, engineer, etc. According to us, and he wants to become a businessman. In this way, his purpose in life is lost. In other words, the purpose of God is delayed. This is the way of deviance. So one has to come to this earth again and again. Apart from the common manners and ways of living, the guts inside the children are allowed to develop outside, then the children will naturally take their own journey of life. Similarly, there are many reasons for the estrangement. Estrangement between husband and wife, quarrel between husband and wife, or between father and son. Human beings have many aspirations from others, whereas God has sent him by making him perfect 100%. He does not connect with God and becomes dependent on others. When his aspirations are not fulfilled, his ego clashes, due to which disharmony in married life spreads. If a person believes in himself, then his tendency to look outside ends and life becomes blissful. Meditation can help us to do this. The whole family should meditate regularly. By meditating, one gets freedom from lust, anger, greed, attachment, etc. Hormones of a person are balanced and life flourishes. The family life of the person becomes blissful. Therefore, for a good family life, the whole family should meditate regularly. Children should not be made machines and let them develop on their own. Man can certainly be helpful in their development, but ideology should not be imposed. In this way, gradually, that family can lead a fully spiritual life. One can live life positively. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. That is, that Sachidananda Ghan Parbrahma Purushottama Paramatma is always perfect in all ways. This word is also full of the Brahman, full of that Brahman, because it has originated from that perfect Purushottama itself. In this way, even if the world is complete with the perfection of the Parabrahma, that Parabrahma is perfect. Even after removing the full from that full, even after removing the full from the full, it remains the full. Thank you all for listening to me.
Thank you so much, sir. So, as you said, like, but sir, then how does the theory of karma applies? Like, as Sharmila ma'am has said, theory of karma, as you said, like, okay, we should not be imposing our ideology to the children, but it's the karma, like we select our birth, we select our parents, we select our friends, family, everything, and then only we take birth. So how does this theory of ideology and how does the theory of karma apply to a person? Who would like to add on this?
I'll tell you. Thing is, like when a child is born in the family, he is already born, let's say, scientifically with a certain number of chromosomes and like that. In the same way, he carries a certain amount of karma which is being downloaded onto that particular baby to be, let's say, for fruition in that particular birth, or for experiencing, or for suffering, or whatever. You may call it whatever you want. He has some good experiences, he will have some bad experiences. Now, there is still the role of the parents here, the lady who has given birth to him, and then the father figure. As Mr. Purohit already mentioned, it is and we have the fortune of being born in a country like India, where there is a long history of rishis and saints who have laid down so many mantras, so many chants for different purposes. So it is the duty of the parents to start sort of the day. Earlier in our households, the mornings used to start with mantra chanting, so that the day begins with a positive view, and that gives strength to the soul to bear whatever has to come into the life, to instill in the child this thought that not everything can be decided by you. So when you recite, when you connect with the divine, you get the strength to withstand what is going to come now. We have always seen that there are so many singers here in this country, let's say, but only some few of them are getting famous. Why? The others, notwithstanding the capacity, are not coming forward, or not getting those opportunities. There are so many dancers who dance so well, but only some are coming forward. Others are not getting that opportunity. That is where the karma is impacting them. We have to do whatever we have to do. Our job, our dharma, our duty has to be performed. The karmic theory is there. It's there on the backdrop. But you need to have the strength required to fulfill whatever is coming in your life, in terms of your duty, in terms of your responsibility, in terms of people you attract towards yourself, and in terms of people who are, like, let's say, coming forward in your life in front of you. So the application is always there. It's sort of, it's like something which is there, which is working, but it may not be so visible. You have to develop the strength within through chants, through meditation, as Mr. Purohit said, through worshipping the divine. You develop the inner strength required.
So here Meenakshi ji would add, like, how do we co-create the circumstances, and how do we, beautify our life?
We actually already are co-creating. So we have to become aware of that. We think that whatever we are doing is just for ourselves. Even when you are, well, nowadays everyone knows, when you're washing your hands and it may seem like something just for you, you are helping to prevent the spread of germs. We always knew that, but somehow it's becoming more aware. Why I'm saying something so simple is because we have to start understanding that even a simple thing that we do is not just for us. It's always co-creating a world around us. When we are, as everyone here, as Mahesh ji just said, you're meditating. All of us have spoken of some form of silence. In our silence, we are spreading out certain vibration, and those particles are going everywhere. As you said, Padamji, that this is at the quantum level. The quantum level cannot be seen or even felt or but we can sense it. And so, at that level, whatever one person is doing is affecting everyone. And the only thing I want to add here about the karma thing, we can't know what happened before that. Before I do something, I was affected by someone. We won't know what I was affected by. And so, if when we are flowing in that conscious way, in that aware way, then we will see how we are all interconnected.
Thank you,
We are
ma'am.
co-creating our world,
Yes,
and
yes.
I really do feel that we are co-creating it for the betterment of everyone, because we have started realizing that we are all
Right.
interconnected.
Yes, yes, absolutely. Shami sir, would you like to add something?
Not to this, ma'am. I had something to say on Shiva consciousness, as the first speaker was talking about.
Yeah,
Can I
please,
add
sir.
something on?
Yeah, please continue, sir.
My take is, if we agree to Shiva consciousness, it involves a belief system and involves a lot of imagination. Someone like a Christian or following another religion may find it quite difficult to connect to Shiva. So my take is, why go outside of you? Because your consciousness is also Shiva consciousness. There is no difference at all. So why go far away? Why not connect to your own self? Why not turn to 180 degrees and connect to your own space, which is also a space of Shiva.
Absolutely.
Actually, your space, as we think that my space, when we are connected to my space, my own inner space, my sacred space, we think that this is my personal space, but it is not so, because my personal space, an individual's personal space inside him, is also a universal space. So if you reach to that universal space, you're already connected to the whole cosmos. So the whole thing is, the platform is already available to us within us. So why go into some belief system or to something into an imagination? Just directly connect to your own self, and everything is done. And the most important thing is, it is already there. Like, we are already there, but the only thing is, there are certain distractions, certain mental chaos is there. There may be a lot of imaginations, or so much we have collected in our journey. Only that effort is needed. You can choose your path, meditation or whatever. Become aware of what is going inside you, and in course of time, if your dedication is perfect, all that dirt is washed off, and you're there. Like, I mean, there is no distance at all. So I think it's better to get into some belief system, or to follow something which to fall into some theory. It is better to direct connect, to turn 180 degrees and connect to yourself. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. So here we got to understand that the energies are so very fragmented, and as Dr. Yugandhar has taken this wonderful journey, so here we are trying to connect all the fragments together to understand the unique oneness by creating the collective energies. So, Sharmila ji, would you say something about the karma theory you were supposed to say, you said?
Yeah. Regarding your earlier question, ma'am, where you said, how will the ecology be managed?
Yeah.
Regarding that, I wanted to say,
Yeah,
because
please.
actually its explanation and how it applies itself is very long and complex. So it takes a lot of time, and 15 minutes is really not
Yeah,
sufficient.
very less.
So
Yeah.
see, nature has its own way of managing itself. We had dinosaurs on the earth. At some point, all the dinosaurs died together, and then the human race was born. So nature managed it. And there were so many times there have been sort of massive destructions, and then new life crops up. Now, what man is doing right now is that, like, let's first take the example of a lion in the jungle. A lion attacks and kills one deer, one elephant, one zebra to satisfy its hunger. All the others manage to escape or they run off, and the horde of the lion group, whatever, they eat, and what matter is done. What man is doing right now is raising animals for slaughter. Earlier, this was not happening. Even the Red Indians, even in America, when the Red Indians were there, they used to hunt. They used to kill perhaps one bison and perhaps thank nature for giving that bison to be eaten. So it was one which was shared among so many, population was less. What are we doing now? Huge trawlers are going into the sea. They are catching millions and millions of fishes. Not all of them may be consumed also. They are dead anyway by the time their bodies are released into the sea, or then they are brought to the shore and sent to the rendering machines, and they are fed back into the ecosystem. We are raising hundreds and thousands of chicken only to be slaughtered. Now that is what is going against the ecology. Suppose if man were each one of us, earlier we used to have cows in the house or buffalo in the house, and perhaps we were taking care of the cow also after she was beyond her milking stage and childbearing stage. Now we are artificially inseminating the cows. So where the actual lifespan of a cow, let's say, is 18-20 years, she is being sent to slaughter in 4, 5, 6, or 7 years because her body cannot sustain more pregnancy. So if we stop raising animals for slaughter or for our selfish needs, the ecology can manage itself. There is no question in nature of not being able to manage itself. We are doing gross mismanagement.
Here my question was something like that. Now, as humans, if we are killing, it's a karma. But ecology is like the animals killing the animals. So how do they bear the karmas?
Okay.
That was my question.
A lion, when it kills a deer, even though it is doing purely out of instinct, even if we were to serve the best of cooked food to a lion, it won't eat, it can't. So even the killing of that lion is charged to the lion. That is how nature is made. And this is not something that I have invented or I am saying. All major saints have said it. It is very subtle, but one can sort of, if you read, and if you're constantly, like if you're into meditation and all, you begin to understand. The killing of the deer is loaded onto the lion, even though it is accidental. How can we explain it? Now, I'm going on the road, driving a car. I'm supposed to be aware of the rules of nature. I bang into somebody. It's a pure mistake. I'm not doing it intentionally. But still, once the car is damaged, the other car, this driver is going to get down and have a fight with me. I cannot say that I did it by mistake. I will be charged. The compensation has to be paid for the repair of the other car. I accidentally killed someone. It was not intentional. I'm not going to eat that person who's killed. My car just hits the other person's car, unfortunately. But it so happens that I have to pay compensation. In the same manner, once the soul is out in the open, in the world, on planet Earth, whatever it does is charged to the person or to the animal. The degree of charge will depend upon whether the animal was in a position to discern whether it was killed or not, and the capacity of the animal killed to bear the pain. But it is charged on the lion.
Okay. Thank you so much, ma'am. So it is endless. Like I have so many questions about karma, but I would love to ask Dr. Yugandhar to say something about the karma, what we are discussing.
Okay. You please be specific, karma.
Karma, I had asked ma'am, like she had put a light on the theory of karma. So what I said is, in ecology, like humans killing animals is adding to their karma, but animal killing one animal. So how does this karma play role in the life of animals?
Life of only animals.
Only animals, sir.
Why only animals?
Because it's the ecology, sir. If we are at fault, if we kill animal and we are adding upon to a karma baggage, then how does it apply to the animals? They are carnivorous animals. They have to kill.
Yeah.
So how does karma play a
Like,
role?
can I add another line which will actually complete this whole circle? Okay. So there is along with karma comes the theory of transmigration of soul. That is the theory of reincarnation. Without that, the karmic theory has very little meaning. So, as I said, every blade of grass, the moment it comes into the soil, it is born, it carries an GPS, which is indestructible as such. It carries memory. Okay. So the blade of grass, through transmigration of soul, will become eventually a mosquito, will become a cockroach, will become a lion, will become a cow, will become a, let's say, that 84 lakhs yonis that we call, and become a human being. So the human being, so the lion, let's say, has killed a deer. It is loaded onto the lion. It is there in his, let's say, recording, in his nadi, in his wherever in his it is recorded. Then when the soul transmigrates from that of the lion to the human being, wherever nature feels that loading can be downloaded, it will be downloaded. Let's say that I, as a woman, I say that I love children. I want to have many children. It is not necessary. The thought is immediately recorded, and nature proceeds to think where it can make me sort of satisfied with the birth of children. So it is not necessary that I am again born as a human being with 2 or 3 lovely kids. I may be sent to the as a soul inside a pig, where I will have 5, 6 piglets. So the desire of the child is satisfied. The yoni is decided by nature. I think that I really want to kill. There is a lot of anger in me, and I feel that I really need to murder. It is not necessary that I become a despotic king. I'll be sent to Kenya to be born as a lion. I can kill and satisfy my desires.
Okay.
So the karmic theory has to be understood with the theory of reincarnation. The thought is recorded, nature proceeds to satisfy. That is how the lion will pay for the killing of a deer.
Okay.
When the soul transmigrates and perhaps becomes a human being, and he will have, let's say, 2, 3 kids, and all 3 will die. Because you also killed a lion. There are certain historic references also which I can give, but it becomes a little controversial. So I'm not entering that deep into spirituality, but there are actual examples when somebody was told that you should not have children because that person, it was seen that he had killed something. So when that person did have children, the child died.
Oh.
There are historic clear references also, but it's only when you are deeply into that will you understand, and to maintain peace between different religions and all. I cannot go into that.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. Sir, would you like to give your opinion?
Yes, please. We have to understand so many things here.
Yes, sir.
First thing is, animals are not inferior to human beings.
No.
In fact, man is inferior.
Okay.
Man is tragedy on this planet.
Because all the animals, including a simple living organism like amoeba, knows the value of life and is naturally spiritual. The soul consciousness of each animal, ranging from amoeba to any bigger animal, mammals in the world, are aligned to the consciousness of the cosmos, the universal consciousness. So whatever happens in the lives of animals, killing or getting killed, is a part of ecological homeostasis. For example, within each human being, there are 60 trillion cells. Each cell has got a lifespan. Each cell is like an amoeba, right? Bigger than an amoeba. When amoeba, as a single-celled organism, knows the divine consciousness, how come the human cell doesn't know this divine consciousness? Every cell in the human being knows the divinity. For each cell, me as a collective consciousness is the God. I'm the biggest God. Each cell of my body knows. All the 60 trillion cells, I'm the God. Similarly for everyone. Similarly for every body of every being. And the collective consciousness of all these cells make this animal as one single identity. And unfortunately, another important point to emphasize is God has not created any human. Humans have created the God. What is meant by it? When everything is godly, everyone is a God. There is nothing like particular God. That means what? God, when we call God as a person, that's all human creation only. Lion doesn't know who is Shiva. He doesn't know any Gaia. He doesn't know any technical word. He doesn't know any language. In fact, the lion or any creature has got tremendous ability to communicate telepathically.
Yes.
The word language came from Latin languor. Languor means laziness. Sounds ironical, right? Sounds different. Language means laziness. Because we are too lazy to communicate telepathically, we have created sound of language. We have invented the sound of language. These are human inventions. God is a human invention. The real God, the way it has to be understood, should become human discovery. When man discovers God, that is the real God. When we talk of God, which is an invention of man, that is not real God. The real God, which is emphasized or declared or described in the form of religions, are all human inventions. The real God, which doesn't have any form and which is nothing but us, each one of us, is the real spirituality, which is a discovery rather than invention. So we need to move from the paradigm shift of this invention to discovery. Man-made inventions of God to man-made discovery. Then we will understand the real meaning of godliness. Let me use the word godliness. Let me replace the word God with godliness. When everything is godly, everyone is a God, everything is a God. And because the human beings are inferior to animals, we do not have any knowledge or wisdom to understand the wisdom of any animal. They are far superior than us. Every ant is more telepathical than human being. Then how can ant is inferior being? Just because it is small, does it become inferior? No, it has its equal beauty. Every flower has got equal beauty. We don't respect them. Just because we think inferior to us, we eat them, unfortunately. We crush them, unfortunately. Being the custodians of nature, we are not really guarding our own nature. So, karma is not a baggage. Karma is not a punishment. Karma is understanding. How to understand karma is alignment of spirit with action is called as karma. For example, as a surgeon, my head, my heart, my hand should work together. If there is any gap, the surgery will become a failure. Similarly, every person has to align the spirit with action. When we don't align the spirit with action, all actions become erratic. All actions become anomalous. All actions go astray because there is no spirit in action. When we align spirit with action, every action will become right. there can never be wrong action. When there can never be wrong action, there can never be a wrong person or wrong idea. Everything will be right. So karma has to be understood by way of aligning one's rooted consciousness with action. I'm not using consciousness, I'm calling it as rooted consciousness, a converged consciousness with action. So all actions, when we do from converged consciousness, every action will become equal to meditation. Every action, the way I talk, the way you listen, everything turns into meditation. So that is what is called karma yoga. So if we sit with closed eyes and all what we call as meditation, we conserve a lot of energy. Just because of 1 hour of meditation, remaining 23 hours, we are more non-meditators. So when we are spending more time with open eyes, we are more non-meditators than meditators. So during the so-called non-meditation time, all the actions of social reality, when it happens in alignment with the rooted consciousness, every action becomes a meditative practice. That is the real karma yoga. That's how karma yoga has to be understood. Then everything appears to be right. There is nothing wrong. Okay. Thank you. Any inputs, comments?
Yeah, wonderful, sir. Wonderfully
Please.
explained. Wonderfully explained.
Thank you, sir. Any inputs? Or any,
I think,
any questions or any inputs?
sir, as you rightly said that your spirit should be aligned to your action. Is it not same as saying you must be conscious of every action, because your consciousness can never allow you to do anything which is against nature, or which is against the cosmos, which is against the creation. So in other words, is it not the same?
No. Conscious about action is different from consciousness per se, because there is a difference. Consciousness per se exists even without any type of action whatsoever, with closed eyes or open eyes. But when we align this consciousness with some activity outside, utilizing our external senses, then what happens is all the actions turn into a karma yoga. All actions turn into, each and every action turns into a meditative practice. That means meditation becomes 24/7 affair instead of that 1 hour closed eye or 2 hour closed eye practices. Every moment of the life totally transforms into a meditative affair. So that is what is important. So being conscious of something is different from consciousness per se. Being conscious of something is called as awareness. So this awareness is different from consciousness, because consciousness do exist even without physical body. So consciousness is totally different affair. Yesterday I was talking about Ekatma Pratyasaram. Satyam Shivam Advaitam Chaturtham Anyante Savigna Sa Atma Savigneya. That means there is no fourth one. All the wakeful, dream, sleep consciousness need to be aligned. And that is a real, total, converged, rooted consciousness. That is what we need to become. And when we become that, whatever that we do, brushing the teeth, taking bath, talking, eating, sleeping, driving, every action turns into a beautiful meditative practice. And there is nothing like closed eye sleep or open eye wakeful consciousness. There will not be any difference. Everything becomes merged, the Turiya state. The Ekatma Pratyasaram. That means everything turns into this, what we call in quantum physics, this superimposition. What is the superimposition? Superimposition, nothing but overlapping of all these 3 layers of consciousness, 3 types of consciousness. So quantum physics is based upon this principle, Ekatma Pratyasaram. That means everything is superimposed on one. The string theory of quantum physics also says the same thing. Yes, sir. Padmanabhan, sir. Interestingly, before I request you to speak, I would like to speak a few words about your name, Padmanabhan ji.
Yes, sir.
So, See, Nabi means center.
Yeah.
From the Nabi of Vishnu came Brahma, consciousness.
Yes, sir. Yes.
And it is in the form of a lotus sitting on the lotus. So a lotus emerging from the Nabi of Vishnu, and there the consciousness sits. So every person should become a Padmanabha. That means every person should awaken the center of one's consciousness.
Thank you.
That is the purpose of every human life. So he who understands the Padmanabha energies, the Padmanabha concept, or getting the consciousness more centered, grounded, and rooted, converged, yes, he alone becomes Padmanabha, and that is the purpose of any human being. And for any animal, every animal is a quadruped instead of a biped like this. Their center is quite not natural. Every animal is already a Padmanabha except human beings. Human beings need effort. Human need practice. Human beings need some type of sadhana type of thing, whatever, to become that. Animals do not need all these things. That it is everything is inherent. Over to you, sir.
My question is, are we chosen by nature for a particular work? For example, we all are healers, or we all are involved in the process of unity consciousness. So there must have been some incidences in our life which suddenly gave us a quantum leap. And because of that quantum leap, we came into this particular field. You may be having some other profession as your main profession. I am a geologist by profession. I retired from Geological Survey of India as Deputy Director General, and I studied from IIT Roorkee. But ultimately, after retirement, I am full time into this cosmic consciousness. So, are we chosen by the nature? Are we chosen one?
Okay. See, my inputs on this is like this. Many people call, to put it simply, purpose of life, right? So when we think of purpose of life, that means we are choosing something as a purpose to live. The actual purpose of life, if you ask, Swami Chinmayananda was asked by a student, what is the purpose of life? So if you pinch the ear of a goat and ask him, what is the purpose of life? He will be confused. The goat will be confused. Why it gets confused? Because it is already very happy, very cheerful, and there is no delivery of anything whatsoever as an individual person called as goat. The very way of living the goat leads it becomes the purpose of that goat, to be more lively, vibrant, vigorous, and the way he wants to be as a goat. That itself is purpose for that goat. Similarly, human beings also need to understand that the purpose of anyone's life is to follow the natural principles and laws of nature and move in accordance or in resonance with that. So a person being chosen by nature or universe or God for certain work is not a truth, because human beings are the only species in the world which are having something called a free will. But he who aligns this free will with the cosmic plan, cosmic vision, then he acquires something called as contribution to the world. That's what we are doing now together, you and me and everyone here. We are contributing something to the world, because that is our very nature. And we are not effortful here. We are not pushing here. We are not enforcing here. When we push, enforce, do anything forcefully, that is against law. So making tall claims of any activity whatsoever is always not in line with the principles and laws of nature. Every human being is a Karana Janma. That means every human being has got a purpose. But there are some people who are called as Mahakarana Janma, because they take up great causes. And this taking up of great cause happens only when the union happens within. When union happens within totally, he thinks of unity outside. And unity happens only when he dissolves himself. When he dissolves his identity, then only unity happens. When I keep on claiming that, everything is happening because of me, unity never happens. It is a type of illusion. It is a type of hypocrisy. So the collective consciousness is totally different. We need to lose our identity and truly, honestly, mindfully, heartfully, soulfully, in all ways, in all perspectives, in all dimensions, move forward to create that beautiful unity consciousness, listening to people instead of forcing our own thoughts or ideas. That's what I feel, sir. Any inputs or questions or anything to share?
No, thank you, sir. Your concepts are very clear and it is enlightening. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
So, what is our next? Okay. I will ask you some question to all of you. I request all of you to share your inputs. We're all talking about unity consciousness. We're all talking about various ideas and perspectives of spirituality, from karma side, from quantum physics side, from the idea of Gaia and the idea of consciousness in different ways and perspective. I've been sharing so many things. How all our sharings, when I call sharing, it means learning and teaching put together is called as sharing. Sharing is not just contributing. In the word sharing, learning also comes. Learning plus teaching put together is sharing. Because we are sharing with each other, because we are listening and also talking. We are giving and taking. That is what is called sharing. I mean, with all these things, how we can create unity consciousness? Because 2005 years back, the population was so small, just 20 million people. But this 20 million, so many great spiritual stalwarts were born. So many, I was talking in the morning, I think a couple of hours back. Now for the present population of 7.5 billion, moving ahead, increasing in size slowly in all countries, how can we actually do something collectively in the direction of unity consciousness? How we can actually create unity? I would like to listen from each one of you, please. I would like to hear, to begin with Padmanabhan Sharma ji. Sir.
Sir, it is a gem of a question and not easy to be answered. But I like to share my feeling that as an individual, if I can transform one person, each one of us, in a month, say, if I can transform one person, then I'll be able to transform 12 persons in 12 months. So the number of persons multiplied by 12. So, and then we request them to transform one person every month once they are transformed. So I think this way it becomes much easier. And second thing is we have to make people confident that once they join this movement of unity consciousness, then not only their life will improve, they will be able to improve the life of others, and the happiness they gain by being involved in this type of process that cannot be measured. That is infinite. That is infinite. If you can create this type of feeling, then I think more and more persons will join our movement, and it will be easier for us to grow it faster.
Excellent, sir. I think exponential way of progressing, which Albert Einstein called as eighth wonder of the world, should be triggered. So the exponential way always happens. See, it is all nuclear fission. The evolution of mankind is always like a nuclear fission, like, as Padmanabhan sir has told, one individual transforming another individual, and he to others, he to that, like that. If it goes on, it triggers a fission. It triggers, that means when 3 billion people get transformed overnight, within 12 days, as per Padmanabhan sir, the other 3 billion or 4 billion will be transformed overnight, 12 days. So after half of the population is transformed, it is It is not that the other person or 100 people or 1 crore people will add upon next day. It will be immediately complete. So that's what we call it as critical mass. So that magical shift, which happens very quickly, is a part of the penultimate step of the evolution of mankind. Yes, it is possible. It is no more an utopic idea. See, in Indian ancient scriptures, we have got something called Sankhya Yoga. Sankhya means mathematics. Spirituality is also based on mathematics. Not only based on mathematics, mathematics is a part of this understanding of spiritual stream, spiritual wisdom. So we can't separate mathematics even in spirituality. Mathematics is the base in every science and art of social reality. Mathematics is also part of spiritual reality as well, as per the exponential principle which was put forward by Padmanabhanji. Yes, it happens. I have a complete belief in this exponential growth of evolution of human consciousness. Yes, over to Sharmilaji. I would like to hear from you how we can actually create this unity consciousness moment together in action.
Allow me
practically.
to sort of voice my views. See, when we do yoga, like I'm a yoga teacher also. So when we are learning yoga, we are told that please, during the duration of your learning process, maintain a strictly vegetarian diet, no consumption of animal produce. Why? Because the kind of sensitivity that is required by the mind to assimilate the knowledge of yoga can be done only when the body, like we say that jaisa khao ann taisa hoye man, or the brain is supposed to be made of very fine particles of the food we eat. So we are told to consume food which is sattvic in nature. So when we are trying to impart this kind of knowledge to others, I feel that the first precondition, in fact, should be that people are consuming only sattvic food. I'm a vegan since last 3 years. When I saw what was being done in the dairy industry, I quit all produce, dairy produce like milk, ghee, dahi, chach, lassi, everything, paneer. I don't take anything at all, and I'm doing perfectly fine in terms of health and all. That is one. Let's say you can say call it an extreme also, in the sense there is a lot of growing awareness among people towards veganism. People are coming towards that, but at least vegetarian.
Sharmila ma'am, I would interrupt for a second because Meenakshi madam is supposed to leave. I would request everybody to bring the mission ahead. Very powerful. Please join as a council member. Okay, so as you sign forms for being a speaker, you can join in as a council member. Meenakshi ma'am, it's for you that I hurried my talk. Please join in as a council member. Thank you, ma'am. Yes, ma'am, please continue.
The council member link is posted on the chat box. You can see it. Please continue. Please continue.
Yes, ma'am.
We can, despite the different races, different religions that we may come from, we can unite with one another deeply from one heart to the other only when the diet is purely sattvic. Otherwise, the brain loses also its capacity to sort of assimilate this kind of knowledge. Then everything else comes in, like the karma, this, that, etc. The capacity to understand goes down. So even when we are following a spiritual path, we are told that your diet should be exclusively vegetarian. There are some gurus who initiate you into spirituality only when you're vegan. Those kind of situations are also there. So personally, I would say that diet should be insisted upon. Purely sattvic, automatically the universe connection improves. You begin to understand that every living organism has a right to live. We have no right to artificially sort of produce them for slaughter or for human consumption, any which ways. There is nothing called humane slaughter or thanking God and then killing. Like I cannot thank God and run my car over somebody. Thank God. It cannot be done. There is nothing called like that. There are people who try to sort of, for their own taste, they try to convince that we are thankful for this food. Maybe when you're living in, let's say, Antarctica, you have nothing else to eat. There is an aspect. And there are areas where our Rig Veda or Vedas also say, approve killing when there is nothing else to eat, kind of a situation. But we are living in a country which has fertile land, soil which produces every kind of fruit and vegetable and grain. So there is it won't be correct on our part to say that we cannot change our diets, but we want to be connected to another person, universal brotherhood or universal consciousness. Nature calculates these things. So I would say that universal consciousness can be obtained, but the precondition, let's say if you want to get admitted to Harvard University, Harvard has its admission rules. And if you don't follow those rules or you don't meet up with those requirements, you're not given admission. In the same way, universal consciousness also, as a basic rule, ideally should have a diet prescription, let's say, a sattvic diet, comprising only of fruits, vegetables, and let's say grains.
Thank you, Sharmila ji. I think it's a time to start the next session on women empowerment, spirituality, women empowerment. Before that, I request Renuka to play this short musical interlude.
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much.
Sure. Thank you, everybody. Thank you very much.